Hey Wargamers, today we're going to talk about how crisis suits have changed since the introduction of new points values in Chapter Approved 2019. In general, I think that the points changes actually are pretty favorable for crisis suits, and we're going to look at how they compare to commanders and Riptides and what that means for how you might want to structure your army going forward. Before we do that though, I want to say thanks for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and hit subscribe. That way you don't miss any of my upcoming Tau content or other 40k news and hobby videos. Okay, so what happened to crisis suits? Why is it a big deal? Crisis suits got a 3-point base reduction, and then fusion blasters also got a 4-point reduction. And so that applies to not just crisis suits, but anything that can take a fusion blaster, of course. But for crisis suits themselves, this is actually pretty important. So that means that you can field a crisis suit at 66 points with 3 fusion blasters. That's a 15-point savings over what you used to be able to do, and that 15-point savings adds up over the scale of an entire unit. So it's an important change, and it actually puts crisis suits in parity with things like a Cold Star commander, at least from an offensive points perspective. So basically, it's 146 points for a Cold Star commander with 3 fusion blasters, and it is 66 points for a crisis suit with 3 fusion blasters. Now, of course, the Cold Star is a commander, so it's hitting on 2s instead of 4s, and it has more fusion blasters, so you would expect it to cost more. In the past, the difference between what you would expect based on the proportional output has been much higher on the commander, meaning that the commander was a much better deal than the crisis suit was. But now at 66 points, they're the same deal. A crisis suit is 45% of the cost of a Cold Star commander, and it does 45% of the output. So that makes sense. That's something that I think we've been asking for a long time, and they are there, basically, which is really cool. It means that crisis suits themselves are, in some ways, interchangeable with commanders. At least with a Cold Star commander. And you don't get the same benefits as a Cold Star commander, right? You don't get the movement, you don't get the Master of War, you don't get the character ability, which is important. But if you're looking at bringing Cold Star commanders largely as a damage dealer or a bruiser later on, you can do that same thing with crisis suits now. You don't have to feel like you're taking a worse deal with crisis suits as you did with a Cold Star. You can bring crisis suits to supplement or even replace your Cold Star Fusion Blaster suit now, and rely on other units like Enforcer suits with Cyclic Ion Blasters to do the more commandery things. You can feel safe in bringing crisis suits with Fusion Blasters, at least from a damage dealing perspective. So what about those other suits? So what about standard crisis commanders or enforcers with Cyclic Ion Blasters? Those guys generally have either 3 Cyclic Ion Blaster and an advanced targeting system or 4 Cyclic Ion Blasters. Because the base points of those models are different, and the efficacy of advanced targeting system is going to vary across the variety of targets that you may encounter, the answer to that question is slightly dependent. But overall, those commanders are still going to be a more effective platform for Cyclic Ion Blasters than a crisis suit. There's not that same parity between Cold Stars and crisis suits as there is for other commanders and crisis suits. So what this means that if you're looking at Fusion Blasters on a Cold Star, you can supplement your army with crisis suits. But if you're still looking at Cyclic Ion Blasters, the commanders are still the way to go, which I think is good. It gives you a little bit of flexibility here. You can augment your Fusion Blaster capabilities as you'd like. And when we look at how these compare to a Riptide as well, we see that the Fusion Blaster suit actually does really good compared to the standard Riptide. And this isn't necessarily anything new, especially given the magnitude of the difference. A lot of the benefits of a Riptide are based on tactics and not based purely on damage output. But still, this means that crisis suits are in a much better position than they were before, and you can bring them now in a way that doesn't give up points efficiency all the time. So I really like that we can at least see parity between the Cold Star and the Crisis Suit with Fusion Blasters. You can bring Fusion Blasters now and field them in a way that is going to augment the rest of your army and not necessarily, pull it down. Plus, you get the advantage of being able to field a unit that can bring a whole bunch of drones with it, which of course is an asset, right? Having lots of drones just plop down on the board is obviously a fairly good strategy, something that's been getting a lot of attention lately. Although in those cases, those are generally, several large units of drones plus a sprinkling of 1 and 2 man drone units elsewhere. This allows you to consolidate that a little bit more, for better or worse, and give you a little bit more flexibility in how you construct your list. So overall, I think a good change, something that I'm glad to see because it does kind of make sense that Crisis Suits and Commanders would have that proportionality between them. All right, so this got really rambly. I think I'm done. I've done way too many takes of this. So in general, the idea is that Crisis Suit point drop is good. Doesn't take a genius to figure that out, but I think it's actually an important change. It's not just a few points that we save here and there. It actually makes some important differences in certain comparisons. So I think it's a valuable thing. Keep it in mind, and I'd like to see how this will play out going in the future. Will we see more Crisis Suit lists? Probably not a whole lot more, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing units of Crisis Suits actually pop up. Am I going to see a list with 3 units of Crisis Suits? No. But am I going to see a list with 1 Crisis Suit unit in it? Maybe. I think it makes sense. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and of course, happy wargaming. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I really mean it when I say this channel is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there as well. Special thanks to Shifty, Dallas Ellis, Jim Bob, Scott Heater, Nick Steele, Jared Egler, Tao Oswald, Jackson, Stephen Cohen, Eric Jackson, Zealous Brimstone, Evan Wells, and Chris Kessler.